Hey folks, it's Billy DKY, the truth seeker that simplifies and demystifies. This is going to be my top 5 tweets of the week review, December the 13th, 2009. The first tweet of the week is, following God is not a closed-minded endeavor. And this is not what you get from Christians a lot of time. They think, no, you got to be rigid. You got to say the Bible's the only thing that is, and you can't look outside of it. You can't look at reality. You can't look at any other knowledge. You got to ignore all the scientific revelations. And so what I'm saying is, if you're truly following God, it is not a closed-minded endeavor. In fact, it's the exact opposite. It is being extremely open-minded, but not being gullible. Now, what is a closed-minded endeavor? That's religion. Being religious is a closed-minded endeavor because it doesn't allow you to learn from another religion or from anything else. Not really. So for me, that was a huge revelation this week, now when I'm dealing with people and they're being closed-minded, I say, you really ain't following God. You just think you are. Now, thinking you're following God is a closed-minded endeavor. Following God is not. So I want to put that wisdom out there so you can defend yourself against closed-minded people who think they're something that they're not. Next tweet of the week, it is enough that you are heard, not agreed with. And I've had problems with this for a long time because I've wanted people, I know what I'm talking about, and I want people to understand and agree with me. And, through talking to people and stuff, I finally realized, you know what, it's enough that they heard me. It's a baby step. They've never heard this truth before. Now they hear it for the first time. That's a baby step in the right direction. They don't have to agree with me, but if I say what it needs to be said, they'll hear it. It'll work its way in their mind over time. If it is the truth, which most of the stuff I say is the truth. May occasionally be wrong on some of the stuff, but most of the time I'm dead on with it. So, again, it is enough that you are heard, not agreed with. Next tweet of the week. Arguing is when a fool finds another fool. And you think about it, well, what's arguing all about anyway? It's just ego. You got an ego, the other person's got an ego. I think I'm right, you think you're right. We're going to battle out in a mental battle to see whose ego wins, and becomes less about seeking the truth and more about domination or winning. The goal switches from I want to share information with you and learn from you too, to I want to dominate you and defeat you. So it's really just a foolish endeavor. And so this is what I say. A wise man cooperates while a fool competes. And really, if you want somebody to agree with you, the quickest way for them to agree with you is to say what you need to say and don't argue with them. If you're arguing with them, all you're going to do is all they're going to do is be constantly focused on beating you. And if you don't compete with them, eventually that thought will win over time. When a tough time comes, well, maybe I should have listened to him. So, quickest way to get somebody to your way of thinking is just to be right and don't argue with them. Okay. And again, you got to follow that baby step to win. And again, those principles in that blog apply to everything, even conversations. They're universal principles that really just don't fail. They work everywhere. So anyway, next tweet. You're going to have to face misery no matter what you do, so you might as well face misery that leads to something positive. And this is how I basically got it. This sort of summarizes how I got involved in this spiritual path in the first place. My whole life I've tried to run from misery, except for maybe a few places where I tried to face it, to get big muscles, to be a badass or attract women or whatever you want to call it. It's a bunch of ego stuff. So basically, what I'd done is run from misery. Any which way I could avoid misery, I was doing it. And eventually, I wasn't doing any drugs or anything like that, but just avoiding misery at any point I could. Well, eventually that led to a point where my life was nothing but misery. Misery was every angle. It had every angle on me completely pushed down, and it was either, suicide or face it. And, I decided to face it. And this week I was facing some stuff, and I was like, there's no place to hide. You either got to face misery on this way. Let's just talk about food for a second. If I indulge in pleasurable candy, I may be able to use that stuff to dull my mind to avoid some misery, but I'm going to face even more misery later on, so that's not a good misery to go down. But if I eat plain, simple vegetables and stuff like that, that can be miserable for a time being. You're like, oh man, I really don't want to eat that. I want something. I want some candy. I want something fatty. I want something, you know. And so that misery leads to something positive. It leads to greater harmony with you in the essence of life, or God, or however you want to say it. So pick a misery that's going to lead to greater harmony, not the other way around. And so anyway, that's that tweet. The last tweet of the week: it costs to get the pleasure, and it keeps on costing after you have it. So think about it. You go to the grocery. Let's talk about non-pleasurable stuff. You can go buy a whole bag of potatoes, 10 pounds of potatoes for like $2.50, $3 maybe, at least where I'm at. A box of candy, you don't get hardly any value out of it, and it costs you what, $3 or something like that. See, on the one side you got 10 pounds of quality food that's nutritious. You may not consider it delicious, but it's very nutritious for your body. Boom, put it over there. On the other hand, you get 16 ounces of Oreos or whatever it is, and that's not good for you. So it costs you more money. If you notice, pleasure is where the profit margin's at. That's why cigarettes and stuff like that, you know, cost so much. So it costs you more money in the beginning, and it's going to cost you more in the end. Because when you eat that candy, it's going to rot your teeth out. It's going to be all kinds of health costs throughout the years, and it may slowly happen where you don't really perceive it, but it is happening. Where, you know, you eat the potatoes, I mean, you might not even have to brush your teeth. I'm not saying don't brush your teeth. I'm just saying, you know, there's not really a whole lot of consequences to eating something plain and natural. I'm not saying not cook it. If you want to cook it, cook it. I'm just saying if you eat plain, simple foods, they're cheaper. And people say, oh, I don't have the money to eat plain and simple. Or I don't have the money to eat healthy. Let's see. Potatoes, 10 pounds for $3. I think you can afford that. Bananas, 10 cents a banana. I think you can afford that. If you really look at all the fruits and vegetables, they're very cheap in comparison to the other foods that you're going to eat. The problem is you don't want them, and that therefore you're not willing to expend the money on it. And plus you think you got to eat a lot more. Well, if you're eating a lot of high calorie, low nutrition foods, yeah, you're going to need to eat a lot more to get the nutrition. Where over here, you're not going to need as much calories, and you're going to be thin like me, and you're going to have to put up with all kinds of criticism, people thinking you're weak, and anorexic, bulimic, or you got AIDS, or whatever else they think, or you're on meth or something like that. You know, that you're going to have to put up with a lot of BS from other people. So anyway, plain and simple is real cheap. I mean, look at how much beans cost. You can buy 16 ounces of beans, which explodes up into, you know, a whole pot of beans for $1.50, and people say, "Oh, eating healthy is expensive." No, it's not expensive. It's cheap. It's real cheap. Anyway, that's all I really have to say. And if you like what I had to say and you want to see my tweets as they come out, you can go visit. You can go in the information section of this video, and I've got a link to my tweets and my other blog, which I'm really excited about, Following the Way of Growth, which that's the universal principles apply to everything. It doesn't matter what you're doing, it applies. And I'm going to start doing a weekly series on that on Fridays. I think it's going to be the day that I do that, and show how it applies to different things. And I already put a video out there on how those principles apply to picking a mate, and if you apply them, you'll find an amazing mate. You'll avoid a lot of failures that other people don't. And I got another blog out there. It's The Essence of Truth, and like I say, it's all in the information section. And if you wouldn't mind, folks, please rate the video. And until next week, later, folks.